Hey everybody, John Skiba here from the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel. And in this video, we're going to talk about bankruptcy in the year 2026. If you have found yourself kind of on the fence, not knowing whether bankruptcy is going to be a good option, but finding that your situation is really requiring it, in this video, I'm going to talk about why the year 2026 might be the best year to file bankruptcy, if there can be a best year to file for bankruptcy.
Consumer warrior is on your side. The consumer warrior.
Chapter 7 is what most people think of when they think of bankruptcy. It eliminates credit card debt, medical bills, personal loans. Those types of debts go away completely. They're generally discharged through the Chapter 7 bankruptcy process. And overwhelmingly, people that file for bankruptcy, they file Chapter 7. The numbers, if you look at it compared to like a Chapter 13 or even Chapter 11's, Chapter 7, overwhelmingly, that's what most people are looking to file. It's a relatively short process. It gets rid of all that debt. There's no repayment plan or anything like that. It just does a really great job of getting rid of debt. Now, the downside to a Chapter 7 bankruptcy is the bankruptcy trustee who's assigned to your case, they will look to see if you have any assets that are non-exempt. Non-exempt means they're not protected under federal or state law, that the court or the trustee can seize, sell, and distribute the money to your creditors. So the upside to a Chapter 7 is it's really relatively short, gets rid of all this debt. You don't have to go into any type of payment plan or anything like that on it. The downside is the court's going to look to see if you have any non-exempt assets that they can sell and make a distribution to your creditors. Now, the good news is that most things that you have are likely exempt or protected. Now, there are federal exemptions, and then there are exemptions in the state of Arizona. And if you're listening to this from a different state, every state has their own set of exemptions. They do vary from state to state. So it's important to understand, important to know if you are not in Arizona, which again is where I practice law, these exemptions likely don't apply directly to you. So you need to find the exemptions in your particular state. AI, ChatGPT, Grok, all those kind of things are great for looking up exemptions. You can just look up the exemptions in your particular state and see how they might be similar or how they might be different from those in Arizona. Now, if you do some of these AI searches or just a Google search on exemptions in Arizona, you might get some outdated information. So I want you to understand that the laws did change in Arizona in 2022, November of 2022, and the exemption laws changed significantly. Probably the largest change in exemption law in the state of Arizona since I started practicing law back in 2003. And now you can protect a lot more of your stuff when you go through the Chapter 7 bankruptcy process. And not only that, when the law changed, not only did it increase the amount as far as the value of the belongings you can keep, it also adjusts every year on January 1st. Now, I'm recording this almost right here on New Year's Eve. So by the time you watch this, it'll be January of 2026, and these new numbers will be into effect, and they'll be able to help people who are filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy in the state of Arizona in 2026. So let's talk about what some of these changes are. The first one, the big one, is the Homestead exemption. Most people have heard of the Homestead exemption. This is the law that protects the equity in your home. Now, how you calculate how much equity you have in your home, it's really easy. You just take the value. You could go to Zillow, go to Redfin, Realtor.com. Just get some idea of what your home is worth. Subtract any mortgage or any other liens that you have against your house. You take value minus mortgage and other liens, and that's the equity of your house. So, for example, let's say your house has a value of $500,000, but you still have a first mortgage of $300,000. That means you'd have $200,000 of equity in your home. So when we're talking homestead exemption, we're talking the amount of equity that is protected in your home, not just the value of the home. So the current in January 2026, the homestead exemption now increases to protect $437,600 of equity in your primary residence. So that means you could file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy even if you have up to $437,600 of equity in your home, and the court wouldn't touch it. The only thing you have to do is keep making the mortgage payment. As long as you're making that payment, you're gonna be able to keep your house And the bankruptcy court, the bankruptcy trustee is not going to go after the equity in your home. Your home is safe. Now, it's also important to know if you have more than that, if you have more than $437,000 of equity, even if it's your primary residence, you need to talk to an attorney for sure, because the equity in your home may be at risk if you're significantly over that. And that's a real danger. That's something you got to watch out for. So that's a big change in 2026. The prior one was 425,000. And by the way, just for some backdrop, it used to be $250,000 just a few years ago. So you can see that change of the law protects a lot more equity in people's home, and it goes up each year. So now in 2026, we're up to $437,600 of equity is protected in your home. Again, as long as you keep making the monthly payment on it. Now, let's talk about the next thing that's protected is household goods, household furniture items, electronic devices, appliances, all that kind of stuff. Now, the old exemption in 2025 protected $16,000 of value or equity in just general household furniture items, and now is increased to $16,500. Now, an important thing to note, if you're married, legally married in Arizona, you can double it. So instead of the $16,500, each spouse can claim $16,500. So what is that? $33,000 of equity in household belongings. Now, it's important to know when you're valuing your household belongings, it's generally just Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, yard sales, whatever it is. You're trying to value what it's actually worth, what the market would pay for the household belongings you have. I can tell you this as a side note. I've been doing this bankruptcy process for almost 23 years. I don't think I've ever had the court go after household goods. They don't want your couch. They don't want your bed, your fridge. They don't want any of that. Now, another big one for people is their vehicles. Obviously, if you live in Arizona, particularly if you live in the Phoenix metro area, things are very far apart. You need a vehicle to be able to get around. And so having a vehicle protected as you go through the bankruptcy process is important. Now, this has raised up to in 2026, you can protect equity up to $16,500 in one vehicle. And if you're married, you can have up to $16,500 of equity in two vehicles. So that's and I should say this, if you're physically disabled and you have a placard or a plate, it jumps up to $27,500 of equity is protected in the vehicle. And again, remember, we're talking equity. We're not talking just straight value. So if you have a car that you owe $20,000 on, but it's worth $35,000, which I know, positive equity in a car, I don't think it actually exists, but let's just say hypothetically, that you owe $20,000, but it's worth $35,000, you can still keep that vehicle because there's only $15,000 of equity in it. And now in 2026, up to $16,500 is protected. Now, a common question we get when it relates to protecting vehicles is you say, okay, I have $16,500. I have actually 4 vehicles. They're all worth $4,000 each. Could I just take that $16,000 and divide it up amongst all of those vehicles? And the answer is no, you can't. There's only really 2 ways that you can do it. One is you can apply your $16,500 vehicle exemption to your vehicle. However, if you have a vehicle that has more than that and you're married, you could stack it. So you can take your spouse's exemption, yours, and you can stack it. But it's either 1 and 1 or stacked. You can't divide it up. You can't do 5,000 on one, 20,000 on another. It's got to be 16.5 on one, 16.5 on the other, or the full 33,000 on one, if that makes sense. So that's just kind of a fine point, but it's kind of all or nothing when it comes to the vehicle exemption. Now, one of the other changes in the exemption laws that is gigantic is the amount of money that can be protected in a bank account in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And again, this is state of Arizona. It was $5,400 on the day your Chapter 7 bankruptcy case is filed is protected. It's exempt. It can't be touched. You can have up to $5,400 in one bank account. If you're married, they doubled that. So you could have $10,800. Well, now in 2026, that increases to $5,600 for an individual, and you can double that for a married couple. So that's huge. And again, it's important to us that's in one bank account, or a married couple can have 2 bank accounts with $5,600 each, or again, you can stack it. It's important to understand you can't have like 20 different bank accounts and spread it out over that. It's kind of 1 and 1 or a stack for a married couple. But $5,600. And that's when we talk about money that's exempt in a bank account, it's important to know that it's really only looked at on the day your Chapter 7 bankruptcy case is filed. When you file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, the bankruptcy trustee is actually going to ask for a bank statement that covers the day that your case is filed to see what the balance was at the end of the day. If you're an individual, as long as it's less than $5,600 in 2026 with the increase, you're fine. If it was over that, they could tell you to turn over to the court any amounts over the $5,600. But if you're married, again, you can, what is that? $11,200 could be protected. And as long as it's under that, then you're fine. So this is a huge one, particularly for some of these old guys like me. It was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the cutoff was $300 for an individual and $600 for a married couple. It was ridiculous. The courts were taking a lot of money from people. It was very hard to kind of juggle that to make it all work. But now it's much higher, $5,600 for an individual or double that for a married couple. Those are some of the really big jumps. Now, there are lots of other exemptions. I mean, we've got pages and pages of law, and I'm not going to go over all of them here, but those are the ones where there was an annual adjustment. And in 2026, it's going to make it a lot easier for people to file for bankruptcy and still protect basically the core assets that you need to get through day to day. And once you do that, assuming that everything's exempt, and like I say, in most cases it is, over 90% of people that go through the bankruptcy process don't lose anything. The process is relatively short, takes about 4 to 5 months. You can get rid of all that credit card debt, medical bills, personal loan. Again, you got to make sure if you want to keep the car, if you want to keep the house, you got to continue to make the payments on it. Got to make sure they're exempt before you file. And that's why it's important to have an attorney who's been doing this a long time like this guy to make sure that everything's protected and exempt as you're going through this process. If you're thinking that you need to file bankruptcy in 2026, or if you just have additional questions, you're in the state of Arizona, my contact information is below. I'd be happy to talk to you, kind of walk you through the process, and we can decide if it's a good option for you. And people are surprised sometimes. There are times when I tell people it doesn't make sense, or we need to look at different options, maybe non-bankruptcy options. But sometimes it is the answer to resolving these debt, things that you've been dealing with for years and years and years. 2026 is going to be the year of the fresh start. Get them in the rearview mirror, get that fresh start that you're looking for. Thanks for watching today.
Consume